Okay, Battletech enthusiasts, Fritz here, part one. We are taking a look at the Mechs, the starting tactica, and a couple of things to keep in mind as you work your way through the Battletech Game of Armored Combat set. I've also included the Mechs from the starter set in there, the two-player head-to-head starter set, so we'll also look and explore them. I'm going to push these individually up to my YouTube channel to give you that introduction, or if you're returning to Battletech, dust that off that Neuro helmet and get you in the seat, get you playing, get you rolling. There are a couple of assumptions that I want to qualify before we move into the mech reviews, and we're going to start with the Locust. I am limiting myself to the included record sheets here, the included technical record sheets, which introduce the stock mech and some of the variants. Different variants on there, not necessarily ones that I would select, but since they're included, as you progress in your tactics, what you are going to move into and onto is the idea of variant mechs. And in the narrative, in the history, when these machines were created, they were built with certain armaments. And then through evolution, armaments were swapped out, either by design or the role changed or just the lack of parts on there. So in Battletech, often when someone will say like a Battlemaster or a Locust, they're talking about the core. If they're going to qualify it with a variant, they'll talk about some of the different numbers, the 5L, the 6N, and that will designate that it's not necessarily a stock mech. So rather than get into all the variants on there, we're going to look just what's included with the set, because that's where you're going to start. I'm also making a couple of other assumptions in here, and that's going to modify and change the tactics a little bit, because again, we're looking just at the core set, playing on the hex maps that are included. When you're playing on a hex map, and not in a bad way, it artificially constricts the areas that you can move, the tactics. You don't have as much maneuverability, even though we're going to be playing with the starter set of a lance, usually of 4 mechs or less on there. The challenge is heavy and assault mechs become much, much more powerful, because while they don't have the speed, they can move to the center of the table, and tactically you always want to dominate the center of the table. And the range of fire with their weapons and equipment mean they're going to be able to reach out and connect with you on there. Medium mechs kind of hold their own, but light mechs, like the Commando and the Locust, they become a little bit more challenging to play, because they primarily rely on speed and positioning to attack from blind angles and maneuverability. You don't have that as much on the hex maps. If you move to a traditional wargaming table, or you put out multiple hex maps, then that changes. Gives you a little bit more maneuverability on there. We're not going to be looking at the pilot cards for now, because they kind of changed the game tactically a little bit. And I applaud this, trying to bring in some of the ideas from the role-playing game on there, and kind of pointing out this idea of pilot abilities, pilot skills, gunnery skill, all important aspects of Battletech, but that's a little bit more advanced. And again, it's going to change the tactics of the mechs and how they operate. We'll get there, but this is kind of like Mech Warrior, Mech School 101. Before we jump into the Locust, on the sheets, what you're going to see is BV, battle value on here. In Battletech, the way the matches, if we're going head-to-head, the way most people will play is we agree ahead of time how much battle value, 2,000, 5,000, and then you build your forces based on this. And the idea is based on the tonnage, based on the equipment, based on other factors in the game. It's saying this Locust variant is worth 553 battle value, 553 points. So I would subtract that from my battle value that I'm playing with, and you and I can play vastly different forces, vastly different mechs, but still have a somewhat fair game. Now, naturally, of course, if you're going in and you're exploring different missions, maybe things will be one-sided, maybe things will be attacker versus defender. The attacker will have more material and mechs, but the defender will have better positioning on the maps. It's a qualifier to help get you in the ballpark of a fair game with how it plays. The last piece tactically, we are limiting ourselves to just mechs on there. In the core set, it's just mechs. If you are following my YouTube channel here, or if you've had the chance to check out my Battletech tactics on my blog, there is the idea that Battletech, and this is what's great about it, can be played a variety of different ways. You can play it straight up mechs. And for a long time, that's how I played Battletech for a good like 10 years. I love mechs. We went head to head. We've blown up hundreds of mechs. We've had great missions on there. But Battletech also operates on what's called combined arms, where you have tanks, you have infantry, you have various vehicles, you could have air support, you could have off-table artillery on there. All things that you can incorporate, and certainly you can jump into that using the starter set as a springboard, even though it's not included. You can find stuff online. As soon as you start adding in vehicles and infantry, that changes things tremendously. And we'll just kind of talk for a minute. Well, Fritz, how so on that? So if I pull out, two of my favorite mechs. I love all these mechs in the starter set. You have something like the Awesome, which is, well, awesome. PPCs, lots and lots of armor, really, really heavy. Then you have something like the Locust here. Light, fast, not really that heavily armed on there. Two vastly different mechs on opposite ends of the spectrum. If you take infantry, an infantry platoon, 30 infantry, and you can get them into cover, light woods or ruins or some sort of fortification, based on the rules for damage and when you're shooting, energy weapons, ballistic weapons, missiles shooting into that do minimal damage to infantry. In the game, it's abstract. A stand of infantry will be in here, but the idea is they're dispersed throughout the hex on there, and they've dug in, and their maneuverability. So you need dedicated weaponry to flush them out. Infantry, while they certainly won't be able to defeat an Awesome, they'll put a lot of hurt on it. They'll create it so that what I would call a nice speed bump where you will have to deal with that infantry, and this mech will do very, very little damage to that infantry over time. Now take the Locust. It's got machine guns, flamers, and other anti-personnel weapons. If a Locust gets up to an infantry squad and can attack it, there's a good chance it's just going to decimate it in one turn on there. So something like this against combined arms changes the tactics drastically. And it puts Battletech, I am generalizing a little bit, it puts Battletech into a completely different way to play. So just making you aware of it, we'll get there, you will move into it, but this is the starting point, the jumping in. So should actually be video 0. Video 1, we're going to move on to in a moment, and we're going to look at the Locust.